Hey, what's up, everybody? What's up, everybody? This is Game Logic from the Rounding Off Infinity Gaming channel on YouTube. One of the co-hosts of the Enough to Keep Going weekly video games podcast on the E2KG Network podcasting channel on YouTube. Back with another episode of the Enough to Keep Going podcast on YouTube. This is episode number 425 for Sunday, the 22nd of February. Here with me, as always, I have my stalwart partner in crime, Mr. Topmaster99.
Hello, everybody. It's nice to be back this week.
Yep. And unfortunately, DBQ had some family stuff to take care of, an event he's attending, so he will most likely not be able to join us tonight, which is unfortunate because I'm sure he would like to get in on a couple of the topics that have occurred. In what was, was a ostensibly slow news week. And I mean, most of the time, when even you guys say it's a slow news week, I usually will disagree with you. Same thing for the other podcast that I'm on, the Basement Radio Arcade podcast. When Brap says it's a slow news week, I generally push back and say, no, it's not. There's just stuff you haven't paid attention to. But it was truly going to be a slow news week as of when I woke up Friday morning. And in fact, to the point where I was not going to post an episode, or I did not post an episode of Gaming Outside the Algorithm. But the gods conspired for that not to be the case. A little about mid-morning-ish, maybe Friday morning, I think the news started coming out. So, but without much further ado, let's get to it. We are not going to start with the news. We're going to start with our main gamer experience stories in segment 1 here at the top of the show. Reporting out on what we've been playing as our main during the week. And so, Tao, you're the only person with a title in segment 1 this week. I'll let you go ahead and start talking about the game, and then, as soon as you start talking about it, I have an immediate question to ask, but I'll let you go ahead and introduce the title.
Okay. So this past week, Xenoblade Chronicles X actually had an upgrade for the Switch 2, which is basically just like a upgraded resolution support. So on TV it's 40K 60 frames, and handheld it's 1080p 60 frames. That's pretty much, looks like it's just like a kind of a passover on the FPS. That's not the game I'm talking about. Although I think I do want to get that eventually, because it's kind of more sci-fi. I guess some of the other ones are kind of sci-fi, but it's more of a sci-fi theme. Like you're in mechs and all this other stuff, so it looks pretty cool. But I jumped back into Xenoblade Chronicles 2 on the Nintendo Switch 2, which is just the old Switch version.
So I do want to jump in really quick with my question, but I think you've already answered it, which is you put this title in here, and I was like, is this really the title he means? Or does he mean he's been playing X because it just got the recent the Switch 2 version update? So okay, thank you for clarifying that.
Because of that, I was like, you know what, I'm gonna jump back into it again. I think I jumped back into it last year, the end of last year, maybe fall or so, winter. Just real quick, because I was doing my kind of playthroughs of kind of old titles on the Switch. But when the X was announced, I was like, oh, you know what? Even though I do like that, the title looks like it's more my jam, as the kids say. Then this one, kind of more fantasy. I guess it's kind of sci-fi-ish too. Xenoblade Chronicles 2. But I was just let me jump back into that because I had a pretty good time with it. I think when I originally played this game, I kind of had a hard time getting into it, and I don't. The combat's fine. Like it's not like it's turn based or anything like that. So I mean, it's you kind of have your kind of just like a melee hit you can do, and then of course you have your special hits that you can do that are on kind of a cooldown. So I don't know. They seem like a really long cooldown from this past time I've been playing. I don't remember it being so long for each of the attacks to power up or whatever it has to do. I just kind of going around I think I'm still in the tutorial. I wouldn't say tutorial, but kind of the very beginnings of the game. There's still, like, when I go into the settings, there's still something that's not unlocked to me. There's like a question mark on one of the screens, so I obviously haven't unlocked everything that I can actually go into. Now I don't know if that's just like another, like a skill tree I got to go through, or just like, I don't know what that is exactly, because there's already a couple areas in there that I can go in and tweak my characters. Characters I should say, more than one, because you have your your companions that you bring along with you that you can kind of. I think you can auto set those. I'd like to go in there and just tweak them all kind of myself. I like to do it manually, so I always leave that auto. And I think you've talked about that too in other games with kind of that auto thing that you can do on some of these on customization and stuff, the skill trees. But yeah, I've just been kind of going through the world. You got your, like I said, you got your companions who I think both of them right now are called blade. They're blades. Basically, is just, they kind of give you a buff. I guess they can do different things. So the two that I have now, the one gives me kind of like a fire boost to my attacks. So I can, once the cooldown is finished, I can use these fire attacks on the different enemies. And the other one's more of kind of like a healer right now. I get some kind of like special attacks with her too, but it seems to be more that she's kind of just healing me at all times. So it's kind of nice. But yeah, I'm just kind of running around this world right now, just doing different missions. Pretty much concentrating on the campaign right now. I'm not doing too many side missions. There's some here and there. I might pick them up, but I might, excuse me, I might not necessarily like get to those side missions right away. I kind of trucking through the campaign missions right now, the main campaign stuff. So, yeah, just having a good time with it. Trying to get back into it now. I've been playing it for the last week, maybe even a little bit before that. I didn't really mention it the week before. I had just started getting into it again, so I didn't want to talk about it yet because I was still trying to learn the systems again and learn how just to fight and stuff. You can do these what they call dives because you're on this like huge creature thing that's kind of traveling across the planet. I don't know if it's Earth or not. I don't even remember anymore because it's been so long since I started the game. It was like years ago. But you're on this giant creature, so you can dive off of it basically and kind of like just basically like fish for stuff like stuff to craft for crafting stuff and stuff like that. So I've been kind of doing that right now. That's actually one of the things I had to do because one of the main campaigns is I have to find these certain components or whatever. So I have to do these diving like little mini game, not even a mini game because you just dive off and there's like a couple of button presses that you do, kind of a quick time event thing, and then that's it. Then you come back up and if you did it correctly, or if you, I think it was like 3 button presses. If you hit all 3, then you get like I think the more loot or better loot, stuff like that. So just kind of learning the ropes again. But yeah, I'm having a good time with it, and I'm gonna stick with it. And I've been actually pretty much playing that all this past week, along with a few of the other games that I just started playing within the last couple days. So, but it's been mostly Xenoblade. So it's a good time. It just makes me want to jump into Chronicles X because I think kind of like Final Fantasy, like they're kind of, I think the games are kind of separate, more or less. I believe I'd have to ask DB for sure. I'm sure he'll know unless anybody knows here who can comment on that. But I think they're kind of self-sustained stories for each of these games. So, but yeah, that's my Xenoblade Chronicles 2 gameplay right now.
Yeah, I think Real Innate, who's in the chat, mentions you're on a Titan, and I think he'll chime in on whether or not each chapter is its own self-contained story. Because I think he plays them pretty. I think he's played all of them and pretty thoroughly. So, and so that kind of brings me to a good point. So, Xenoblade Chronicles does not. That whole franchise, presents to me as this one of those games that we talk about often that doesn't lend itself to you putting it down and getting and going back to it, right, and jumping back into it. It seems like it would have. Sorry about that. Seems like it would have some kind of ramp up, and it would be one of those things that I hate, which is, you put a game down, you go back to it, and then you're like, what was I doing again? Like, what was the plan? And so that's interesting. I'll talk about Dragon Quest VII Reimagined a little bit later tonight, just very quickly. But one of the things I love in Dragon Quest VII is when you load your game file, it brings up a dialogue, a prompt that asks you, hey, do you want a quick synopsis again? And I would love to, like, as we skate forward into the future of gaming, I would love a game that would, like, do that. I hesitate to use the term AI, but whatever automated means, the technology is definitely there and it's definitely capable for it to kind of crawl your past game save files up to this point and give you back like a 2 minute, so kind of like Netflix, right? When you go into a Netflix show or any video streaming show, really, but in particular, I think Netflix, I think Amazon, I guess maybe all the video streaming services, but you go in and the front part of the episode is like a recap, right, of what's happened so far. And they don't do that automated. That's actually like part of the content that comes from the studio. But it seems like a game should be able to do that kind of procedurally and kind of create that on the fly, as as you start your game, and give you back like 2 minute clip, a 2 minute total segment filled with multiple clips of, like, of your gameplay, and kind of give you a narrative synopsis of what you played through so far. That was my hope when when Dragon Quest VII Reimagined popped up that prompt the first time, and then the first time I clicked it, it's just a bunch of text, right? That gives you, right, which is all it's doing is presenting to you what's in your journal. So like if you didn't hit that, you could go into the game and you could go into the journal on your own. But that was a very lengthy way of me getting around to the question, like what is re-onboarding to this like?
Gameplay wise, it wasn't too bad. Like, like gameplay is not like super complicated or anything like that. Excuse me, I'm still trying to get over this stupid cold. Got this cough still. Yeah, I mean the gameplay is pretty straightforward. Now going into trying to customize people, that's a little bit more involved because there's like a whole heck of a lot of menus you have to kind of click through, and trying to figure out what does this do exactly when I'm putting up this certain number or whatever. So it's like that I had and like I said with the story, I'm like I have no idea what's going on. And like I wouldn't even know those other companions are called blades unless like one of them had to actually said, or somebody when I was talking to him was talking about blades. I was like, oh yeah, that's right, they're called blades. I forgot. So yeah, like I said, gameplay wise, that's fine. Like it was not super difficult, but so far at least, I haven't really. Like I said, I think there's still some stuff I haven't unlocked. So maybe once I start getting a little bit deeper into it, and if I do that like few month, 6 month, 9 month, well, however long it had been since the last time I played it, and then try to come back to it, it might be a little bit more difficult, but not too bad so far. Just like I said, like the story is just like I have no, like it's everything's going right over my head. It's like I don't know what these people are talking about. Like I don't know, which I mean it kind of sucks. Like I kind of like the story's kind of interesting. Like obviously, like you said, like Nate said, you're on these giant titans. Like, and I kind of remember like a little bit. Like once I hear people, certain characters talk about stuff like my companions, but then I get some randos coming in and start talking to us, and it's like I don't know what you're talking about. Like I don't know who the king is, or the guards and all this other stuff that's going on. It's like I don't remember any of that stuff. So, and that could just be side stuff that I just don't remember, but. Hopefully it's not too bad as I'm continue playing the game.
Now you mentioned you felt the combat wasn't too complicated for you to get back into. Like, so having played Expedition 33 last year, and working through Pictos and Luminos and and all sorts of like just jargon that doesn't map to like the real world, right? And I could see that being complicated getting back to. And this year playing The Legend of Heroes Trails Beyond the Horizon, and having orbments and quartz and mira and and workshop points and like all this stuff that again doesn't really map to any kind of real world system, and it's all this stuff that you have to onboard and learn. I mean, so how is the combat kind of simplified and flattened for you in a way that makes like re-onboarding to it easy and manageable?
Yeah, other than just like remembering like how, I guess that was probably the only like kind of difficult thing was like how do I enter combat? Like because I can, when I was out in like not in the city like where there's like animals and enemies mobs around, I would go by one and all of a sudden it's like okay it like the screen doesn't change or anything, but you can tell like on your character and kind of the music starts to change when it gets dramatic when you're about to get into a fight or when you're in a fight. And like the creatures, actually, they're creatures. They start hitting me. I'm like, okay, like why do I not have the ability to start, fighting back, and there's like a button press you got to do before you can like actually enter for your character to enter the actual fight. So I had to remember that. I was like hitting buttons, that was probably the once I understood like, okay, I got to hit this button to enter fight, and then I can hit these buttons or hold this button down to get the specials and all that. Then I was it wasn't too bad. So, and I don't know if it's just probably because I don't have time, like as much time anymore to game. Like I can't like the thought of like restarting games like this is like I can't do this. Like there's just no way. Like I don't have the time to go all the way back from the beginning, and unless I was like only like an hour in, or if but I'm like probably a few hours in. I'm like 4 or 5 or so, and probably to a game like this and a lot of RPGs, it's probably like nothing, but still, like I said, which is with a time constraint, it's like, I know I'm just gonna bowl my way through this thing, and I'll figure it out, as I go. So, and it seems pretty straightforward now. Like I'm in these different areas, I'm walking around, and like I see an enemy. Okay, I can see he's level 5 or 10 or whatever. I think I'm level, I think 8 or 9 right now, or something like that. And then I had to go to this other area to do. I think it actually was a side quest, and like all the enemies are like level like at least 20 levels above me. I was like, oh, like I don't want to get near this person or that this thing or that thing. But once I got to the quest thing, it was fine. Like it was like around my level. So I was like, okay, I'm just gonna defeat him and just like get the heck out of here, because otherwise I'm gonna get tore up. So it's just kind of things like that. So yeah, it's really not too bad so far.
Yeah, it'll be an interesting topic as we go throughout the year, because like the Legend of Heroes Trails Beyond the Horizon, I had a map and like a time management like set of buckets like mapped out of like I'm gonna play to this point, and like if I'm not finished by then, I'm gonna like move this into like the tier 2 kind of backlog where I just play it like on weekends, right, to finish it up. And what has actually happened is I have been so fearful of the bow wave that could come from re-onboarding that I just haven't put it down. Like literally out of concern of, if I don't push through and finish this, I may never finish it. And then I'll have blown 86 hours of time invested. So yeah, it'll be an interesting topic, because I think as the gaming industry changes, as the platforms change, which platforms change as we're about to get into, I think certain elements of like how we're approaching playing games is evolving. As I always say, it should be. Like I said, we've all of us on this show have been gaming for a significant amount of time, and I don't mean since the 90s. I mean since probably longer than that. In comparison to like a lot of other gamers. And what I always say is like, look, if you game for 20 plus years, and you're literally the same gamer you are today as you were 20 years ago, because you refuse to ever do anything but go eat at McDonald's, out of fear of ever trying anything new, then that I personally feel like you've missed out on like the point of immersing yourself in the art, right? Like, I mean, through my time as a gamer, what's happened is that like every decade or so, like my approach to gaming has evolved, right? And I've gone in a direction that has often been me trying something different than what I had been doing. And sometimes it's been a rough transition, and sometimes there's a lot of flip flopping. There's a lot of like, I'm going to try this, and then I back off of it, and then I go back to it, a few months later, and but the enjoyment has been out of the journey. So it'll be interesting to see how things evolve here in the year. I walked into this year going, I don't know that I'm going to have anything to talk about at Gaming Superlatives, and now like it's a 180 out degree perspective. So we will see how it goes. Tao, anything else on Xenoblade Chronicles 2?
Nope, that's it. I'm gonna keep trucking along on it.
Okay, well, let's continue the discussion with things that are evolving at a fairly rapid pace, as we've seen from the news trickling out over the weekend. So the first news story in the rundown is obviously the really big news that dropped. I don't know why that's doing that. I think that's doing that because I have Chrome split. Okay, here we go. Okay, Phil Spencer retiring, Sarah Bond out, Matt Booty promoted as Microsoft AI exec, Asha Sharma named new Xbox boss. And I believe, yeah, this is this news article over on IGN by Ryan McCaffrey. Spencer's run with Xbox ends just months shy of the brand's 25th anniversary. Microsoft Gaming CEO Phil Spencer, who has been at Microsoft since he joined as an intern in 1988, and with Xbox since the software giant launched its first console in 2001, is retiring. Sources familiar with the matter who are not authorized to speak publicly confirmed to IGN. Now, this was literally like 15 minutes before the announcement became official, and it actually came out, via Microsoft press releases and blog posts. Spencer's retirement is effective on Monday, February 23rd. Meanwhile, Xbox president Sarah Bond, long thought by many both inside and outside of Microsoft to be Spencer's heir apparent, has resigned. The new CEO of Microsoft Gaming will be Asha Sharma, currently the president of Microsoft's core AI product. Finally, Xbox Game Studios head Matt Booty is being promoted to Chief Content Officer, who will work closely with Sharma. So for those not familiar, Chief Content Officer is not a new or unusual position. It is the CCO. It is a C-suite level position that is typical at companies like large movie studios or streaming services or large television corporations and video game companies. So any company who is into making content, right, for entertainment, the CCO is not an unusual position who is aligned alongside the CFO, the COO, etc. And essentially, my personal read on it is this essentially makes Matt Booty the equivalent of Herman Hulst, who is in a position that has been occupied by, I think, I was going back through this research. I think Shuhei was in that position beforehand, and I think Kaz was in that position at some point beforehand, before he became head of PlayStation, and then before he went on to become the CEO of Sony itself. I have yet to see the details on what that, like, why is it different, other than elevating him to an EVP position, because within a corporation, those ranks will mean something different in terms of the privileges that you're allotted, the authority that you have to sign off on stuff, but also how your bonus package and things like shares in a publicly traded company are concerned. And then it also dictates how your severance package are constructed if you're ever let go, and things of that nature. And then what your payouts are, what your 401k looks like, and all that other kind of stuff. I want to thank Phil for his extraordinary leadership and partnership. Microsoft CEO Satya Nadella said in an email sent to Microsoft staff, over 38 years at Microsoft, including 12 years leading gaming. Phil helped transform what we do and how we do it. Full emails from Nadella, Spencer, Sharma, and Booty are below. So I'm going to stop reading the article at that point. There's a ton of stuff to go through on this topic, but I've spent the entire week, like an entire 48 to 72 hours talking about this topic in Discord, in text messages, and this is like 3 times this generation. It has been Xbox news that has shaken the foundation of the gaming earth for me personally. It is that platform that has had news stories drop that have caused me to just stop what I was doing, get on the phone with people, whatever. The first time was when I woke up in the morning. I was commuting in on my way to work, and the news dropped that they were buying Bethesda. And then same thing, I woke up in the morning and they were buying Activision, and now this. So 3 times in the last 5 years. So I wanted to spend most of this time kind of turning it over to you and letting you see where you wanted to go with the conversation. Your thoughts and comments on the things that have gone down so far.
Yeah, I mean, I think like most everybody, I was just totally shocked. I was like, wow, just kind of came out of nowhere. Obviously, I guess we haven't really seen or heard from Phil really since I'm not even sure if he was at the Direct last year. I'm sure he probably was. I just can't remember because I think I actually missed half of that Direct, so I only got to watch the first half.
He came out on stage very briefly in the Direct last year, and talked about the Asus ROG Ally X, ROG Xbox Ally X. he was not on stage for this year's Direct just last
Yeah.
month.
And was he at Gamescom or do you remember? I don't
Yeah, I'm
remember.
sorry. I may have been wrong. He said he can't. No, actually, I think he was not in the Direct last year. I'm sorry. Yeah, that was a different approach. That may have been at their showcase last year. But I think the little segment of of whatever show, the very first time that the ROG Xbox Ally X was mentioned, I think that was his spot. And then there was some quote that we recently heard from him in like the November December time frame, and yeah, that's I think the last thing that we kind of heard from him.
Yeah. So yeah, that was so it had been a while, and then you get that initial punch in the gut with him retiring, and I'll do that in air quotes because who knows what's going to happen now once he leaves Microsoft. Maybe he could just retire and you know live life away from work. I'm sure he's got the money from Microsoft that he could do that. But you see a lot of times like those high up people they'll go somewhere else usually. So I think other than the gut punch of that, being announced, this like the next thought I had when after I heard that was, I wonder where he's going to go. That was my next thought because that's why I'm thinking he's probably going to do something, but who knows? Like you just never know. And then there's a second gut punch with Sarah Bond leaving. Like that was like I was like, oh, like she just resigned. Like she's gone. She's out of there. She's not even gonna try to do anything within the Xbox or Microsoft ecosystem. And then obviously Matt Booty I've heard of, but I never really heard of the other. I might have heard her name before, but since she's on the Microsoft side, I didn't register at first, so I was just like, okay, I guess we'll have to see what happens, with her going forward, because like it or not, like obviously Phil tried to correct obviously what had happened with Xbox once the Xbox One, the original Xbox One, had launched with that kind of some people call it debacle. I still don't mind it too much because I was always a fan of the Connect and that kind of stuff. Like I knew that was kind of hit hard, hit people hard with that being packaged in there and just and maybe not so much that, but it's kind of the marketing behind it and what past CEOs and heads that had said at that time. He was trying to right that ship, uh, he, and I think he did. He did get it there at one point. But I don't know what happened here at the end because and I don't know if it was happened to do with him, maybe because he was leaving, maybe well, we may never know, like when he kind of stopped making decisions for Xbox, and that was I guess the other thing too is like he's retiring, and it's like boom, he's retiring Monday, like right away, like it's not obviously a lot of people give 2 weeks and stuff like that, and maybe it's just because of his stature, in the company, and this is just looking to even my personal experience with when higher ups like that leave. It's like usually they'll stay on for sometimes quite a while, actually, even just they're in the back end, they're in the back, just doing whatever they're doing, helping with the new person coming in, but like he's just gone. Like I don't know like what that's all about, how, and what happened there. If it was just obviously a lot of companies now are just like looking at their internal departments and internal people, and it's like, hey, do we still need this person, or shuffling things around and stuff like that. And it's just the whole thing is just weird to me. Like I don't, and just how it's all playing out. Like I just don't get it. Like, um, but yeah, I guess kind of too because I was kind of been thinking about it just off and on the whole weekend just because I've been busy with stuff. But it's just like I don't know. I just can't wrap my head around it. Like this had happened. Like obviously we knew he wouldn't be there forever, but just in the way I guess he's kind of going, it just seems kind of weird to me.
Yeah, so that's been a lot of what's been going on the last 48 hours. I think when the first thing that I had available was what was officially reported and what was officially like in the emails. And I'm just not a person who goes in a lot and tease off of based on rumor and hearsay. Um, so everything that I saw in the first minutes of like this article being posted, and the emails, indicated to me kind of what I would normally expect, that that there's succession planning in place, that these things are long lead. So first of all, the norm in corporations is that if you are anything other than like an associate manager, or like an entry level like frontline manager, typically as soon as you hit the management level where you are handling things where there needs to be turnover, like you can't just be gone, and like somebody's like it's minimum 30 days. And in particular, once you become an executive, again, it's minimum 30 days. Like unless you were being asked to leave, you are not, even when you serve notice, it's not 2 weeks. Like you hit a point of seniority where serving 2 weeks notice is looked at as being disrespectful to your boss and to the organization you're leaving, and is considered burning a bridge. Once you get to a certain level of management, there's levels of management where if you walk in and submit your 2 weeks notice, you're pissed, or you're definitely going to piss other people off. So everything that was in writing and that was on the street was that this had been discussed since last fall, that there was an ongoing transition plan, that people had been huddling for months and then weeks for some of the lower levels of management, and that this is the type of thing, right? This is the way that I would expect things to normally proceed. In the wake of that, I've heard from former employees at Xbox, and then we have Greg Miller, who commented on air that something had been passed to him that indicated that this was not an agreeable departure, right? This was not a peaceful, right, parting of ways. That something came to a head, and that this was not a choice for some of the people involved. My read on the Sarah Bond thing has been since the beginning, like the fact that she's leaving. What that told me, and I said this also when I can't remember her last name, Connie Booth. When Connie Booth left PlayStation, and I've seen this happen in reorgs, right, and turnovers, that often when you have a new person appointed, that person steps up, starts talking about how they're going to move some of the chess pieces on their board. All these people are lined up in positions vying to be the next thing, right? That is whatever is the next thing in their path. And when these poker chips start moving, often there will be people who get told, you're not going to be the next CEO, you're not going to be the next COO, you're not going to be the next CFO, but we have a gap over here in like shared resources or director of like proposals or something, something that's like not in their preference, and they'll be asked to go do that role. And often the response from those people is like, "Screw you! that wasn't my plan. That's not what I want to do. Here I've been working at this position for X number of time, and you told me that I was going to get this position, and now you're telling me you're not." And that's a situation that I've been put in, right, where I was put in a position to head something up, and one of the people who was reporting to me, like one of my very first conversations I wound up having, was how she had been told that she was the heir apparent to the job that I had gotten. And then it was a matter of me trying to, make peace with her and kind of settle her down and get her to do what I needed her to do. And then with all of those people, and I've seen that happen to like other people in leadership positions. And then what happens is there's always a little bit of saltiness, right? And then you got to start deciding, whether or not that person stays, right, and understands what's going on, or whether or not they need to go. And some of those decisions happen very quickly. Like I said, I was at a Fortune 500 company that underwent a reorg, and the company was kind of split in half across business lines, and the business line that I was in was kind of considered the prima donnas, right? We kind of, like, all the people out of our group kind of always exceeded like to the next level of leadership. but it was the other group who somebody was picked from there to be the CEO. And when that person ascended, they picked all of their friends, right, to move into corporate management positions, and there was a whole shuffling of the deck. And a lot of people from our side were like, yeah, whatever, like I'm gone, because they were being asked to do things that weren't in their bailiwick and weren't their preference, and weren't the things that they felt that they had been promised. So the Sarah Bond thing has to me sounded like from the very beginning she was being groomed to be the heir apparent. She was being groomed to take this whole thing over. She was told that she was passed over, and at the point she was told she was passed over, she was like, "Wait, yeah, forget that." Like I've been here. I am on. I forget what show she was on when she got like ambushed. I think it was right after the closures of like Tango GameWorks and Arcane Studios, and then she went on that interview, and the person asked her, how do you have these studios who, you said Hi-Fi Rush was like this great performing game and then you closed them down? And it was clearly an ambush. She had clearly not been prepped for that question to come across. I don't know if the person had that in their back pocket and like popped it on her as a surprise, but like her body language, the two things that were clear to me. One, her body language said that wasn't my call and that wasn't my decision. It was either something I was told to do or actually that was Phil and Matt. And the second thing that her body language said to me is, these mofos are back in Redmond, like eating, catered sushi lunch, right? While I'm out here on the press tour, taking the heat for things that I didn't decide. So I think, again, that's the type of thing that breeds this. I've done for you, I've sacrificed, I've eaten a crap sandwich. And now when it's time, right, for somebody to accede to leader to the throne, you're telling me it's not going to be me. Not only are you telling me it's not going to be me, but you're asking me to now stay on and work for this person who you've given the job to. And that's the type of thing that will make somebody say, no, thank you. I'm out of here. Other thoughts, Tao?
Yeah, I was trying to see when she had started. I think it was back in 2017, I believe.
I think she was there.
Well, at least with Xbox. Maybe Microsoft, she might have been doing something else, but
no, I think she came over from T-Mobile straight into Xbox. I thought. I think she's been there since at least 2016.
Okay,
maybe 2015.
Yeah. Okay, I was just wondering, just looking through here. Yeah, I mean, I guess the next big thing too is then, like, I don't know. Like I said, I don't know who this Asha Sharma is, and obviously I knew Matt Booty, but he I guess he just took over. When did he take over for Xbox? Just a couple years ago, I believe, right?
I'm sorry, who
Matt Booty?
Matt has been in that seat since
a bit longer.
Because he wasn't appointed that position right along with Phil. He was at Mojang for a while. Phil, I want to say he's definitely come into the fold. He's definitely come into the fold. He came into the fold, I think, just before this generation started. And has been there, I think, a little bit since maybe 2018, maybe 2019.
Okay, so yeah, not too. Yeah, it's fairly long, I guess, but yeah, I just trying to figure out, like, what does the future of Xbox look like? Like, are they the driving forces then? If it has been. Like the article says, that he was kind of talking about it since, last year. Excuse me, or the previous year, I think it was. Phil, I'm talking about, about leaving. So, have they been the driving force with everything that's been going on, these past couple year and a half or so, with the different price change? I mean, obviously there's external, things too that were happening, but ultimately they if they were the ones making these kind of decisions, and I already voiced my kind of opinion at superlatives and at the end of the year about my current standing with Xbox. It's like, I just kind of backed away for right now, and it looks like I'm going to stay back just to see, and it might, it's probably going to take a long time too. Might take another year or two before we see like major changes that they'll implement, but I just don't know, like where this is all heading. Like, I know Phil back in the day, last couple of years have always said that there's going to be at least one more Xbox of some kind, some kind of hardware going in, in the future after the Series X and S. But I mean, maybe that's not going to happen, or maybe that it will just be that one more, and then that's it. Like they're just going to live in the, as a service, of sorts. So I don't know, kind of, it's hard to kind of tell the future, but um, it's just going to be interesting to see like how everything kind of works out, with this new leadership team.
Yeah, and I don't even know if it's well. I mean, well, I guess it probably will be a GLT that will look a little different than what the thing that we used to call a GLT. And so one thing is Matt Booty has been in that seat since 2018. So Phil Spencer got made head of Xbox, and then at a certain point, I can't remember exactly when, he was head of Xbox, but he was down. I think he was reporting to Terry Myerson. And at a certain point, he got moved to where he reported directly to Satya, but he wasn't a C-level officer yet. In 2018, I think is when he got appointed to be a C-level officer, and at that point, he was called at the time. His title was the title Sarah Bond eventually had, which was president of Xbox, I think. And he was kind of wearing two hats. He was kind of both in charge of. He had been in charge of the studios, and that, in fact, that was the position he was in when he was moved to be head of Xbox, to replace Don Matrick. And I don't know if anybody had been. The weird thing in the 2013-2014 timeframe, there's a whole cavalcade of like a cat herd of people who were heads of a little piece of Xbox. I had forgotten that Stephen Elop, who was famously the CEO of Nokia, who had been at Microsoft, then went to be the CEO of Nokia, then came back to Microsoft when Microsoft bought Nokia, and then Microsoft, of course, shut Nokia down. I'd forgotten that Stephen Elop was still flopping around and was actually head of Xbox hardware and devices at a certain point, as Phil was kind of coming to power. So, but at any rate, Phil got named CEO, and then Matt Booty took the title of being the head of the studios. I'm not clear in this chief content officer role if he now, because there was a certain point where it was notionally him. I forget the name of the guy who was kind of head of stuff at Bethesda, Pete Hines, and then the various heads at Activision. One person at Blizzard and one person at Call of Duty, and of course the Call of Duty general manager. I think Johanna Fairs, she shifted over to become CEO of Blizzard, and I forget the guy who's now GM of Call of Duty. But Matt's role was that he was not necessarily head of publishing at Bethesda and Activision, but in the most recent reorg before this, there was a reporting line from Bethesda Publishing that now went through him, and I think that was put in place after Pete Hines was walked out, and I think as part of the Redfall debacle, right? It was like basically you guys are going to report up through us now for publishing. So what's not clear to me now is now whether or not he has more direct control now, even more so over Bethesda Publishing and Activision Publishing. The chief content officer, and he's an EVP now. Being a C-level officer tells me that he like all content goes through him, regardless of the publishers that they've acquired. So yeah, I mean the future of Xbox. I mean, who knows at this point? There's lots of theories. There's lots of theories. Like I think to be a little too much weight is being given to that she was head of product at AI. She's been head of product of AI product at Microsoft for all of like 18 months, and she's not like, and yes, she's had tangential touches with AI in some of her previous jobs, but like from her talking, she's not an AI expert as far as I'm concerned. From what I've heard her speak to, she is and her degree is in business. So she's worked with product, but she is not an AI. She's not an AI SME from my perspective. From what I've heard her, where I've heard her talk. She's more of I would say more of an AI salesman. Than an AI SME. So I mean, before she took over, I had already been theorizing that I think they're going to do Xbox Magnus, and then while Xbox Magnus is on the rise. Sorry, I've been watching WandaVision, so I'm thinking about Agatha Harkness. Um, while Magnus is on the rise, I think they are. I've already said I think they're concurrently going to try and get their usual laptop vendor partners, so Dell, Alienware, Samsung, Acer, Asus, HP slash HP Omen, all of these guys who also make things that they brand as Xbox, like in the same way that that they have done with the Asus ROG Xbox Ally. Except that there will be set-top boxes, and then I think that the generation after that, there will be no more first-party hardware. They'll be relying on all of them. So this was all, to me, in my mind, was already the generation of transition to that. I do suspect that with her being brought in, that is being done to accelerate it. I think, and again, so we're firmly in speculation station now, right? What I think is that while that was kind of the professed plan of Phil and Sarah, I feel like what this indicates is there was some sense that there was going to be some dragging of feet and resistance to that they were going to like go about doing it, but they weren't going to be as aggressive about it, right? Which I think has been the pattern of behavior that we've seen over the last couple of years, and where choice has been taken out of their hands, right? Where it has become much more so, no, you're going to put games on other platforms. You're going to stop telling us that that's going to piss off your fan base. Like, we don't care. You're going to put games on other platforms because it doesn't make sense for you to be investing $70 million, $100 million, $100 plus million in making a game so that you can sell it to 30 million people on the Xbox Series X and S, and when most of them aren't going to buy it because they're on Game Pass, right? That's not passing the Amy Hood smell test. So you're going to put games on other platforms. I think they went about doing that, but based on the way the snowball rolled downhill so fast to where it was only 4 games, but I'm also never going to say that a game's not going to go to another platform, to I would never put a fence around, like all of these things happen. I mean, the only 4 games, but I'm not going to say a game's not going to go to that happened on the same day. Literally that late February 2024 business update, there's a thing that they said on stage, and then there's things that he said in the interview with Tom Warren. So, and lots of people didn't read the Tom Warren interview, and that was part of the problem. So he said on that same day, only 4 games, but and don't think that everything is coming. But then in an interview that got posted in written format, where most of the problem is that gamers don't read, is that he also said, Tom Warren asked him, "Are you saying that Starfield and Indiana Jones will never go?" And he said, I don't think I would ever say that there's any title that would like that would be entirely off the table in perpetuity, right? For discussion of going to another platform. Then fast forward a few months, and then it became I would never put a fence around a title and say that it would never go to another platform. Fast forward a few more months, and it became there's no red line on games that will go. And then in January, right, a year later, you've got Forza Horizon 5, right, the biggest tentpole game from Xbox at the time, going to PlayStation 5, which followed the announcement of Indiana Jones going to PlayStation 5. And knowing how software development works, when that got announced, I think in August, out of Tokyo Game Show or Gamescom opening night or whatever, I think Gamescom opening night, like in August, if you're saying that port had to have been in development back in February, like they didn't just start it then. So, but I think my sense of it was that they were being told to do that, but there was constantly this like resistance, right? Constantly this dragging of the feet. And I feel like this regime change is about, okay, like I've told you games need to go to multiple platforms. I've told you that the price needed to go up on Game Pass. I've told you these different things. And every time I tell you these things need to happen, you guys drag your feet. You guys, do this kind of tacit resistance. You keep these secrets, right? And you talk amongst yourselves in these secret emails, and you don't do this stuff as quickly as I want you to do it. And eventually what has to happen is I have to call you down to the office, and now I'm at the point where I've got Amy Hood in the office with me, right? And I had to have her finance guys go help you guys construct what your Game Pass tiers look like. and now I'm tired of it. Now I'm gonna put a person in place who, when I say that I want a thing to happen, like that, it just happens, right? And I don't have to micromanage it. Is kind of the fan fiction that I'm writing around what I think happened. But yeah, I mean, then there's other extrapolations of what people think is going to happen. I have also made the comment again, not my theory. I just help the person articulate the comment. I said, there's potentially a future where Xbox becomes an app centric service, right? So it's just an app, and it can live on, the console. It can live on a PC. It can live on a television, whatever. And you just go to the app, and that app is your entrance point to contact, and in that way it becomes like Uber, DoorDash, these other app centric services where the service doesn't really have a place that it exists, right? It's just a thing that you call for on demand.
So going to that app service like that, because I'm always, that's fine and all. Like, I understand, like, if they can get onto, if they'll go on PCs, they'll be on TVs and, all these set-top boxes maybe and stuff like that. Trying to get that app though onto another console though, like, I don't know if that's going to be such a straightforward like thing that they can try to do. And I get, and obviously you're not saying this. This is other people saying this, and doing all this other stuff, speculation and all that. I know that's probably what Microsoft as a whole probably wants. Satya wants, but trying to get this app, like this Xbox app or Xbox service or whatever, trying to get this on a PlayStation or a Nintendo or whatever, I don't know, Amazon or whatever. When especially when these are the guys they've been fighting for God knows how long now. It seems like forever, but I don't know if that's going to be such an easy thing to do. And like I said, obviously on PC and stuff like that, I'm sure that's it's gonna be fine because it's just another app. It's just another Ubisoft Plus or whatever they're calling themselves now. It's just another Epic Games app and stuff like that. I guess my worry is getting these people in there, because I've seen this happen. Where you get these C-level executives in there, and they don't know. They're not. I guess how I want to kind of say this, they're not passionate about gaming. They're just all about the numbers, and that usually doesn't end well. Like, I've seen that in the past, like that happens, like in the companies I've been at, where they're just like, oh, we're just going to bring in this. Like, I've had this happen. We're going to bring this marketing guy in here as the new CTO of or CIO of IT. And everything just goes to crap after that. Like, it just doesn't work. Like, and that's why and I don't know. Like I said, once again, I don't know this Asha. Like, I don't know what her mindset is. Like, we're gonna have to find out. But that's kind of my fear in the back of my head is like, oh, this is I don't know if this is gonna work. But like, once again, like I said, we'll have to see what happens. And then the other comment I want to make, when you're talking about Phil Spencer, and it just kind of popped in my head, talking about Phil Spencer, how he became head of Xbox, or he was Xbox. And he was head of Xbox and doing this other stuff at first, obviously, because eventually he became C-level. But kind of paralleled Anakin and the prequels, where he became part of the council, the Jedi Council, but he wasn't given the right of master, given the rank of master. That's just, I want to lighten up the mood a little bit, so I just want to throw that out there. So,
well, it's I'm sorry. Go ahead.
No, go ahead. I was saying.
Well, it's funny you made that reference. That of Phil Spencer as kind of being the chosen one, who maybe eventually went to the dark side. And I think you and I are of similar feelings that over the last 5 years, the PR and the messaging from this person who was supposed to be the chosen one just became like, and I'm just going to say it, like literally in the last 5 years has gone from smoke and mirrors to something being hidden behind his back to just straight out and out lies, or at least co-signing lies. Because I will continue to insist, Todd Howard, when he was interviewed on CNN and asked about Starfield, and asked whether gamers are complaining about Starfield on PC, it appears that it's not a well optimized app, and Todd Howard's response was, it is a well optimized app. You may just need to upgrade your PC. And then Phil Spencer and Matt Booty are giggling in the background like frat boys, and I'm like, I'm sorry. I have 5 gaming PCs here on different hardware sets and different configurations. I was testing and playing the game, and the game was not well optimized at launch. And so that was a blatant lie on his part, in my opinion. And it was co-signed by Spencer and Booty. So, like, over time, he has just become, Phil Spencer has just become less and less genuine in what he's conveying to people. And I feel at certain points he's been telling and saying things to people that he knows are going to change. And he has, and I go back to when Game Pass went up to $30. And literally the week before, he was in Japan at Tokyo Game Show, right, doing photo ops, glad handing with content creators and influencers, and none of them were conveyed that bad news. He gave them the impression that everything was on the up and up, that everything was great, good times are coming, we're still in the hardware game, all this stuff. So, anyway, sorry, that's a very long way of, again, saying, it's so funny you made that reference to him, going to the dark side, being the chosen one and then going to the dark side, because the other thing that I've been thinking of with Matt Booty is Matt Booty to me is now Admiral Piet, right? They've now force choked Phil Spencer and Sarah Bond, and they've turned to Matt Booty. They've put this new 36-year-old, by the way, CEO in charge who has no gaming experience, and they've turned to Matt Booty and basically told Matt Booty, and the next one to be force choked is going to be you if something is not the way that I want, because we're not going to force choke her, right? She's the one that we've now anointed.
I didn't realize he was that young. I thought he was older than that.
Yeah, no, it's a female, and yeah, she's 36, which I mean is part of the.
Oh, I thought you were talking about Matt Booty. I was like,
oh no, Matt Booty is in his mid to late 50s.
I was gonna say, like, wow, he looks pretty good for.
Yeah, no, yeah, he's in his mid to late 50s. She's 36.
Okay.
Yeah, which again goes to and this gets into some of the things that now aren't passing the smell test, right? There's a lot of to do about, like, well, she doesn't come from the gaming industry. I personally feel like, and I'm trying to find my tweet, we have numerous instances of examples of people either being promoted to leadership or actually kicking off startups where that technology market or field was not their domain expertise. So, in fact, I'll go ahead and bring it up on screen. Here's my tweet on that topic. Like, Brian Chesky, who kicked off Airbnb, Jack Ma, who started off Alibaba, Evan Sharp, who started Pinterest, Chad Hurley, who started YouTube. But then the people who were promoted into positions, Lou Gerstner, who took over IBM and managed their pivot from being a hardware company into being an enterprise services company, and actually saved that company because would have gone under otherwise. Angela Arentz, who came in and stood up Apple Retail at the point where they were going to open Apple stores and revolutionized the way Apple now kind of appears and presents to people. Did not come from a tech background. She was I think she was the head at like Lululemon or something. She was at a fashion brand. Meg Whitman, who took over and went to eBay. By the way, I put the brakes on that. Like, that's and then stop there, because everything Meg Whitman has done since she left eBay, I think, is bad. Including now she's now ambassador to like Denmark or something like that. Completely different person as far as I'm concerned. And then Hubert Jolly, who was brought in to take over Best Buy. So I think we have examples of where, look, and like, everything's not a Ted Lasso, but some things are Ted Lasso, right? Some things are, you bring people in who like, that's not, they're from some adjacency, but at the end of the day, they need to be good leaders. However, the thing that's not passing the smell test for her, is that she has been very transitory. She was at Meta, and then she was at Instacart, and now she's at Microsoft. She's been at each of those places for less than 5 years. She goes there, she gets rapidly promoted to VP level positions, or she was the COO at Instacart, and she doesn't stick around. And I'm like, we all know the topic of like highly transitory employees, and yes, there's a little bit of that in like the tech industry, but I would not expect that at the executive. So there's things that just don't pass the smell test, right? On there is you can, if you dig, you can find stuff out there about how people think about her, who have worked with her, people who have worked at the companies that she has been at. The opinions are not very high, and the smell that comes off of it is somebody who is very obsessed about promotions, and there's to me the closest analog is there's a very 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 Marissa Meyer feeling about her to me. And if people don't remember Marissa Meyer um, was the female executive at Google who was passed over for the CEO position. I think when Eric Schmidt rolled out and Sundar Pichai became the head, and I think Sundar was the one who, when they reorganized to Alphabet and he became the CEO. I think Andy Rubin was also under consideration, but there were some black things in Andy Rubin's closet, and so he got passed over. So she got passed over and was salty. But then she got picked up to go be the CEO of Yahoo. And then, like, when you looked back at her, there was like not a lot of meat on the bone there as far as what warranted her like being, granted that position. So there's a lot of that to this to me. So I don't know.
Yeah, I guess my only other thing was when you had mentioned Bethesda and Activision, I was like, oh yeah, I forgot about them. Like how we haven't really, obviously. I mean, it's pretty new that they have been bought, so um, just to see what's going to happen with them and everything going on over there. Excuse me, everything going on over there. So yeah, it's going to be an interesting time these next few years. So we'll see.
Yeah, and I mean, part of what I mean, reading some of Real Nate's comments, like part of what frames my mindset of where, like, I don't feel like she needs to be like this deep game because, and you can call it bias, because because I've been a person who's been, I think I've only been hired for like two jobs where I like arguably legitimately had like expert level like experience, right, and background in that particular thing. I've always been hired because, hey, there's this thing that I need to have happen, and I don't have anybody who can figure this thing out. And I've tried to put people in this position, and they failed. So I need somebody who's more of a generalist and very broad instead of like a deep expert, like to come in who has the ability to be a student and like figure things out. Um, so, so like I said, I think that's absolutely feasible. And you mentioned Take Two CEO like Strauss Zelnick. The whole thing about, well, she's not a gamer. I'm like, let's make sure we understand like most CEOs of most companies are not gamers. Um, and Strauss Zelnick is not a gamer. Most of the gaming CEOs of big companies were not gamers. Um, so that thing doesn't ring true to me. But like Nate says, like the
Yeah.
problem I have, I'm sorry, go ahead, Tal.
I was going to say, yeah, I think Spencer was kind of an anomaly with where he was a big gamer. He actually did play the games out when he was there. So
Yeah, and
and just
I
in
think
general,
what we saw was that was part of the problem, right? Because he unfortunately was often too much of a gamer and was trying to do things to try and be nice instead of like running a business. Um, but I mean, like I said, I mean, we have plenty of CEOs that are successful, that are gaming CEOs that are successful, that are not gamers. Strauss, like I said, he's not a gamer. And I've seen a lot of people kind of picking up on the common thread, like the 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 CEO of a gaming company, their job is not to play games. Their job is to clear out obstacles, remove impediments, right? Talking in agile lingo, enable people to do their jobs and be their most creative. Don't foist administrivia on top of them. Don't I can't remember what was the form from Office Space or whatever. Um, you know,
the TPS report.
yes, the TPS. Make sure that they don't have a bunch of TPS reports right to fill out. Let creatives be creative, but also not subject them to like laborious, slave-driven crunch. Because you didn't clear out enough impediments for them to execute upon their schedule. So, I mean, I go back to what's most important is that the person be a good leader. Like I don't really care whether or not they're a gamer or not, or what their gamer score is. I think it's really foolishness. Like there are these things that happen on social media where this crop of, I'll just call them people, have created these false social norms and social rules that you're supposed to abide by. Like, oh, this now the CEO of a gaming company has to have a high gamer score, like our high trophy. Like get out of here with that foolishness. Like that is not the way the real world works. That is not how you get promoted into positions that's not like, you know, I don't know. So, you know, we'll see. We'll see how things go. But all that being said, there are a lot of negatives piling up in very rapid fashion. Her being on Twitter all day Saturday, interfacing with fans, saying things that are giving people false expectations and false hopes. I think those are indicators of things that may not go well. So we'll just see what happens. Tao, any other comments on this? Okay, let's go on to the second news story, kind of a major news story of the week. And actually, Asha Sharma, in her first interview with Variety magazine, mentioned this report, which is Matthew Ball's The State of Video Gaming in 2026. So I think I have his report, but I actually want to read a little bit from. So he was on the Game Business Show again this year, as he was last year, and we talked about his report then. So I'm not going to read at the top. There's one thing here that particularly stood out to me that I did want to read. My favorite part of the conversation with Ball was around single-player story games. Single-player narrative games. I think, look, I have the deepest respect for Christopher Dring and Matt Piscatella. I think there are things that they believe that are becoming part of their mantra of things that they're trying to say very loudly. And so I think when they see data that corroborates that notion, that the reason this is Christopher Dring's favorite part of the conversation is because he thinks it's something that corroborates what he's been trying to say. And I don't agree with what he's trying to say on this topic. My favorite part of the conversation with Ball was around single-player story games. Single-player narrative games are having a tough time at meeting historical expectations, Ball notes. Tears of the Kingdom drastically underperformed relative to Breath of the Wild, despite Switch being larger. God of War Ragnarok versus God of War, Spider-Man 2 versus Spider-Man 1. A successful hit here might sell 15 to 30 million units of the high end, and the game completion rates, the game complete trophies for The Last of Us Part 2 sit at the 40 to 50% mark, so 40 to 50% of people will finish a 30-hour story. If you mash that up with other data, we see that the older you get, the more likely you are to have disengaged over time, which is to say a man or a woman 45 plus plays games less today than they did 5 years ago. This is an often discussed challenge of older people having less time to play games, but it's not purely about time. And then he goes on to talk about a major thing in his report, which is that there are these other attention-grabbing things that are happening in digital media entertainment that are taking up people's time and resulting in them playing games less. So, Tao, have you had a chance to look through this report, or did you listen to the podcast, or have you had a chance to read any Christopher Dring's post on it?
No, unfortunately, no, I did not have a chance to this past weekend.
Okay, so this is going to be a little rough because this is just like it was last year, this is like a 200-page report. So I don't know if I'm going to be able to hit all the stuff. But look, I mean, lots of the doom and gloom that are in this report are the same things that we've seen written, most of the time over the last year or so. I'm going to try and hit the slides that, to me, are the most important. And this is the major one is China. Let me just see if there's any comments here. I don't think she needs to be, but the crafting this fake persona is weird. I agree, Innate. No, there's lots of stuff that's coming out about the gamer account that's ascribed to her that is not real. So Warwana says, I'm gaming less lately because I'm painting Warhammer with my missus. I want to do more with my family. I don't want to pull us all to TV screens always. And so just on the topic, before I start flipping through the slides, I mean, the comment that like 45-year-olds play less, and then so they're spending fewer hours, so people are less likely to play 30-hour plus games. one of the things that I want to say that I'm firmly believing in is that this notion of engagement numbers, and we've talked about this a lot on this podcast over the last year. This notion of engagement numbers, and I'm also going to go with time, doesn't necessarily equate, because we're not seeing the data, doesn't necessarily correlate with the data associated with where people spend money. And I think the only thing that's important to the gaming industry, and I think that's important about where you invest, where you make investments, is based on where people spend money. So when you talk about people 45 and older are spending less time playing video games, I'm like, okay, but you also just put out data that says that the people who are spending money on the gaming industry is that same demographic. So if I'm PlayStation or if I'm Nintendo, do I care how many hours they're spending and what their completion rate is and how many trophies they're getting out of a game? Or do I care that they're spending the money on the game? I probably care most about whether or not they're spending money first. And then I worry about engagement numbers and time. Those things aren't necessarily always linear, don't always have a linear relationship. And I think this whole notion of like, oh my God, people are spending so much time here and people are, there's so many engagement numbers here, aren't associated with like where people are spending money. That part of the story is a plot hole and gets left out. And I don't know if it's getting left out deliberately, but I would like to see those things paired up, right? Because like, yay, verily, people on PlayStation and Xbox are spending 40% of their time in black hole games, but is that where they're spending money? Because if that's not where they're spending money, then I still want to invest, because the investment is what causes them to buy the console. Like, quite frankly, once they're on the console, I maybe care a little bit less about where they're spending their time, but I want to get them into the store first. And once they're on the store, if they spend their time on the aisle with the paper products versus like the meat aisle where all my high-end steaks and stuff are stocked, I care less about that, because if I don't get them in the store first, they're not going to be on any aisle. So, I don't know. But this to me is one major part of the story is China. And I've talked on my solo cast about how, look, the growth region is APAC, right? The Asian Pacific. That's where people have the most potential, and we're seeing the largest growth in people buying games, participating in the industry, yada yada yada. I often joke with people, and I say, look, the way the U.S. is screwing stuff up now, we're all going to be speaking Chinese like in 20 years. And I say that because, first of all, I love the show Firefly, which is the way the world was. They were all speaking like, broken versions of Chinese. And Blade Runner, because all the ads that you see in Blade Runner are all Chinese ads. But that's part of the tale of the tape. And I think, what you see here is you see PlayStation making investments in the China Hero Project, almost as if PlayStation understands that the biggest growth area is in APAC and that there are things going on in China. And I talked a few years ago how, there are these private equity firms and investment and like people who follow the money. Like, there is a concerted effort there to always recognize and identify, and they're always trying to skate to it, like before the other companies are trying to skate to it. They are actively engaged in trying to figure out where is the next bucket of development talent on the rise, right? So they can get there first. Years ago, before the Ukraine-Russia war started, it was Ukraine. And that's, how you got Stalker. And there were other games coming out of Ukraine, and they monitor this stuff, and they see these things that are blips on the radar, and they say, oh, there's one dev team there. There's now 2 dev teams there. There's 3 dev. Oh, hold on a second. There's something going on over there. And, these people who, siphon the money, they try to get into those regions and find the talent and see what's going on, so that they can put the investment dollars there and put their flagpole down before other companies do. And China is one of those places.
Well, I mean, like, I think both Microsoft and Nintendo had just recently, not recently, but within the last few years, finally broke into that market. I think at some point too. Like, I mean, like they knew that's a whole chunk of gamers that they hadn't obviously had and not to their detriment, because it was kind of China just walling off everything, but they kind of loosened the grip, as they say, and letting these other companies finally come in and start selling their systems and whatnot.
Yeah, I mean, definitely. If you go back a few years ago, there were American consoles weren't allowed to be sold in China. And then I forget what year it was, but yeah, then a regulation lifted where those things could be sold. Um, and this was one of the other major kind of themes of the story is Roblox, and that was this thing that like all the biggest amount of the growth is in Roblox. And while that's true, I want to put it in context. Roblox's revenue last year was $5 billion. So out of a $92 billion industry, there's $5 billion going towards Roblox. This notion, there's a couple of notions. There's this notion that kids are only going to want to play Roblox. I think what needs to me, what needs to be kept in mind is so we've seen stages of evolution of the gaming industry where money floods. We saw we saw flooding towards multiplayer, and so there was this point where people said, EA said, we're never gonna do a game that doesn't have multiplayer in it. Then we saw flooding towards microtransactions and battle passes and free to play, and so the whole industry chased that trend. But a thing that we seem to leave out of this conversation is that what happens at each of those evolutions is there hits a ceiling, there hits an apogee, there hits an apex, and then there's no growth available. Like none of those trends have swelled the industry and then become unstoppable to the point where they gobble everything up. They hit certain ceilings and then they stall. And so, yes, maybe there is super huge growth on Roblox, but again, you're also comparing a very very small number, right? So the number doesn't have to increase that much for it to look like huge growth. But then it's like, why would you believe that trend also doesn't have an apogee? That trend doesn't also have saturation? That trend also isn't going to hit a point where it has a ceiling? Yes, there's Roblox and yes, there's Minecraft, but there's nothing else. And why would you think that it's not going to have the same effect that the Big Ten black hole games have? That again, it hits that ceiling and then it hits a saturation point and then it hits a max. And then to everyone else trying to come into that space isn't open, it's now highly contested. And that's why things trying to compete in those spaces can't survive. That's why things can't go up against Call of Duty. They can't go up against Fortnite. They can't go up against Apex Legends. And every single one of those things that has this huge number of concurrent users on day one, right? 6 months later, it's a different story. So yes, this is a good trend and it's nice, but I don't believe that it's going to be never ending. And I don't believe that and I don't know that there's more UGC type of content coming along, because now that you have Roblox and now that you have Minecraft, it seems like nobody else can get into that space either. So I don't know. Tao, any comments on that while I'm scrolling through? I think there was one other thing that I wanted to hit in here.
No, yeah, you pretty much. I mean, it's the same thing. Same thing with like a Fortnite. Like all these people were chasing the battle royal, and then you can't because everybody's playing Fortnite. So it's it's kind of the same thing. Just it's always that trend when that one big thing hits, since everybody's trying to jump on it. But if you only have one or two big things, then you kind of SOL at that point, unless you make something like extraordinary, which is pretty rare, which is I think kind of the point.
Yep. I think the one other trend, I think there's one other one beyond this, but one trend I want to stop on is mobile. Again, there's this feeling or this sentiment, and I see lots of things being written that everybody needs to shift over to mobile, and we see here on these charts, mobile has stalled. Right, mobile spend in 5 years is flat, and new releases are at a decade low share of spend and downloads as old giants strengthening UA cost credit discovery. So I think we read from one of these reports a couple of months ago, right? The fact of the global industry market is that it has become very polarized, and now they're kind of in the same way that gas games are on PC and console. There are basically 10 games that consume the vast majority of the revenue in the space and leave very little for people coming in, and much more so even in the PC and console space. It's old games that have established and have a user base that are making most of the money. And so very few new games come in and score big, make more than $1 billion, when they in the year that they launch, and so that market is also becoming contested. This was one of the other things. Lastly, many of the leaders that have grown or sustained revenue have done so by successfully raising price, not from growing players, purchases, or playtime. And I think one of the things that I want to see here, and I think this is the last point for me that I wanted to mention, I think one of the things that I want to start seeing here is seeing how this is allocated across platform. And so one of the things that's one of the things that this report and others center on is that, like, well, money has been lost, sales aren't as high, blah 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 blah. And I'm like, okay, have you guys accounted for how much of that loss has come out of Xbox, and then how many of that is being compensated for by sales and increased market share on PlayStation and Nintendo? And if you guys say, well, like, total units of software sales are down, I'm like, okay, if you had three vendors and one vendor is selling less, then doesn't that make sense that you would have less total overall unit sales? Is that being made up for by the other vendors? And if not, is the market seeking equilibrium? So again, I think there's too often, like, there's a focus on, like, one negative data point and then not a more holistic look at some of the other data points. So it'll be interesting to see. I think what this report settles down on is the same conclusion that I've drawn and that I reported on 2 weeks ago, 3 weeks, 4 weeks ago, where I said my personal belief is that where the industry is now is everybody is looking for their own entry point and access point to gaming, and it is no longer just around 3 set-top box consoles. And so you have a lot of niches and extreme verticals where people want to access it by handhelds. People want to access it at different price points. And so I personally think that's maybe a little bit of what PlayStation is thinking by the notion of doing a handheld, potentially doing something that is like a PS6 Lite and a PS6, or maybe with the intention of launching a PS6 and a concurrent PS6 Pro instead of waiting 2 years into the generation. What they're doing is they're looking at these platforms and they're saying, we don't want developers to have to code differently. We're just going to provide a low power setting, and then you're going to deploy your game to those multiple platforms. And the only thing is on these lower level platforms, it's just going to run at lower res with lower frames. And that is to have this Samsung-like approach to a market where you have different products at different price points for people who want to come in through different access paths. And I think that's fine for that to mesh and kind of build across the entire industry. And so I think it's fine for PlayStation to have a bunch of price points, for Nintendo to have 1 or 2 price points, for Xbox to maybe have like 59 different price points of how you access their ecosystem. But I think that's what gamers are looking for. So hopefully, the industry will meet that need. But I think that's the need that people are looking for. I don't think people are looking for less good games or more lower quality games, or quite frankly, more games beyond the 19,000 already that are published on Steam and the like 3,000 to 7,000 that are published on. I don't think we need more games. I think we have too many games. I think the inventory is saturated. I just think we need good games, and maybe from a hardware perspective, we just need multiple price points of entry. I don't know, Tal. Anything else you want to talk about on that topic?
I just want to reiterate. Yes, we don't need more. We don't need any more games. There's just too many that come out every. It's amazing. Like, if you think about it, like back in the day where there was like a handful of games that we were looking forward to, like within a month, and now it's like exponentially grown. It's just insane. And then plus all the just kind of nitsy bitsy games that get thrown in there, just because they can, I guess. But yeah, it's just kind of overwhelming sometimes, which I think is why, personally, me, it's just like I'll just stick to my my core like 2 or 3 games that I like to play here and there, and throw some other stuff, every now and then. But yeah, it's just it just gets overwhelming sometimes.
Yep, absolutely agreed. So let's go ahead and get on to segment 3. Let's kind of try and push the tempo here since we are about 6 minutes over time schedule and over clock schedule and about 4 minutes short of our length objective for the show. I'll let you go ahead and get started. I think I have some games here in the list, or I have one game here in the list. It's DBQ's, and of course he won't brief his, but I'll let you go ahead and get started.
Yeah, I jumped back at the ball pit. It's not ball expand. On the Nintendo Switch 2, they had an upgrade for the Nintendo Switch 2 recently. I was trying to see. It doesn't say. I didn't see. I couldn't find when the upgrade came out, but basically just kind of a resolution and frame rate improvements. And it does look a lot smoother. Like it was kind of, I don't want to say fuzzy, but almost like grainy. Almost it almost looked pixelated, which was kind of weird, even though it's all 3D rendered pretty much. But it just had this weird look to it. But now everything's like, you know, pretty smooth and pretty clear. So I was playing a little bit of that actually yesterday, I believe, last couple days. So just having a good time with that. But yeah, I've gotten I think two of the characters of the I don't know how many. There's like 20 characters or something. I don't know. And I'm seeing amount. Speaking of having a lot of things to worry about, but I only have two characters so far that I've unlocked, and well, one I haven't unlocked because the other one is just a default that you get. Yeah, just having a good time with it still.
Very cool. Very cool. The games I have been playing. Yeah. So the first two games I've been playing, Dragon Quest VII Reimagined. Again, not going to talk about it a lot. I only got like a few more hours into it this week. Like I. I'll go ahead and talk about the other one too. The other game I've been playing is Legend of Heroes: Trails Beyond the Horizon. The thing I like about these two games is they are very kind of diametrically opposed in terms of like the Legend of Heroes: Trails Beyond the Horizon is almost as much as it is a JRPG, it is also like a full-on management sim. Like, I think the only thing that they could layer in on top of it is if you had like base building and city management, like, but managing your party because by the time it's all over, your party and your cast of characters that you have control of is like 24 characters. It is very kind of a Fell Seal Arbiter's Mark kind of in that way, and maybe a little kind of Ayuden Chronicle, but just a vast array of characters. And so what I love about the contrast is Legend of Heroes Trails Beyond the Horizon, super heavy, right, in management and progression management and like equipping and managing your powers and your arts and your crafts and your S breaks and all that kind of stuff. And then you have Dragon Quest VII Reimagined, which is just this cute, cozy game that you can kind of set up to run in fairly automated fashion and just kind of monitor how things are going and intervene when something looks to be going bad. And you're presented a story that is not nearly as complicated as the political tapestry of Trails Beyond the Horizon, which is very like just straight up Game of Thrones like worse than Game. Not, I mean, I won't say worse, more complicated than Game of Thrones. And like everybody works for like an intelligence agency, and so they're all like lying and telling half truths, and like it's just crazy. Um, but yeah, but I'm having tons of fun with it, with both of them. I've got about two more chapters in Act 3 left to get through in Legend of Heroes Trails Beyond the Horizon. I'm at 86 hours. I should finish. Finishing is within the realm of feasibility. I think I will be down to one chapter left in Act 3 tonight. I think I think I can knock out another chapter here in 2 hours after the podcast. And then I'll just have the one chapter and the two final bosses to get through. But it's taken a significant amount of time. Unfortunately, and this is the thing I don't like. I've been playing it for a month and 2 days at this point, which is just a thing that would normally grind my gears about how much time I've spent, playing one video game and not having time to get to other stuff. But I will mentally deal with that and then move on. What is your other game that you've been playing?
I just real quick too. Speaking of mentally dealing with stuff, I was this close to buying that Star Trek game this past week. I was like, no, I got too much stuff that I'm already playing with. So I'll get it on like on a sale or something at some point. The other game I'm playing here is Mario Tennis Fever on Nintendo Switch 2. Just going through the adventure campaign mode still. I played one of the tournaments. So the tournaments kind of act like I guess the Grand Prix from like Mario Kart, where there's like different cups that you can kind of go through. So I finished the Mushroom Cup, which is actually fairly easy, but I'm assuming it'll get hard as you keep going. But and I still need to try the towers, which is I guess that's kind of another. I think that's more not so much a tournament, but kind of like a thing of mini games that you go through. I believe I haven't really looked at it too much, but I'm doing that, and then just played a very small amount of online versus actual people online. So still just trying to get used to the game, and I've learned actually a bunch of different kind of tricks that you can do with the ball now. So hopefully, I'm not getting my butt kicked in as much as I was before as I kind of go forward with that. But yeah, just having still a ton of fun with the game. I'm really enjoying it. A lot better than Aces, I think, so far.
Very cool. And then the other game that I've been playing has been Metro Exodus. So I've had a really good time with that. Yeah, playing Trails Beyond the Horizon and Dragon Quest Seven Reimagined. The one thing I've been missing in my rotation is, something that has a focus and an emphasis on performance on PC, frame rate, high image quality, all the bells and whistles. And those two are good looking games, but they're also games that, like, at least, Trails Beyond the Horizon. And if I was playing Dragon Quest Seven Reimagined on PC, it would be the same thing. But they don't require a ton of oomph and power. So I often sometimes get a little anxiety, when I am playing on PC, but I'm like playing on something that's like not stressing my equipment because I'm like, why did I buy all this expensive equipment if I'm going to play like some, pixel art, 2D side scrolling game? Um, so it's been nice to, play around with Metro Exodus and use all the NVIDIA GeForce bells and whistles. I will say though, again, part of the problem with that, just in managing the dynamic of game time, is often I will get home, it'll be late at night, I won't get started gaming like when I want to, and then it hits a certain point in the night where I'm like, I don't want to play Metro Exodus. Again, it is very heavyweight, and there's a lot of, like, you got to manage your up, like, you can only upgrade a thing when you find a workbench, and then you have to have salvaged a bunch of parts, and then you like need the secret recipe to do, like, so it's like the crafting component of that game is very, very heavyweight and sticky, and like but you get so little ammo that you can't approach it. Like, it's not a game that you can approach like, look, if I don't want to craft, that's fine, I can just go in here and play 2 hours shooting stuff. No, you can't do that in Metro Exodus because you're going to run out of bullets, and your weapon's going to degrade, and then you're going to have nothing. So you have to spend time being involved in the crafting loop, and that can get very, very heavyweight. Speaking of heavyweight, Tao, you've been playing at least one other game that requires you to at least understand the do loop of how to get through stuff as you go from planet to planet.
Yeah. So the last couple games here, real quick. No Man's Sky, still going through that. I had some quests. Well, I finished the main, I guess the main story quest that you can say, quite a while ago. Where you, I guess, well, it's a 10-year game pretty much. So you get to go do another galaxy basically. You just kind of start over and start doing your stuff again. So I did that a long time ago. So there's a bunch of other little kind of minor quests, side quests that I hadn't done. So I'm kind of working my way through those kind of stuff with the bases, and you build up. You can have different stations like a weapon station and farming and all these other things that you can put in your base. So I'm kind of going through those right now, along with some other just kind of minor quests that uh, most of the time when they do a like a major upgrade, they kind of have a quest that goes through that. So I'm doing one for the it's called autophage. It's basically kind of the android or robots of the world. And at the end of that, I think you get like a new staff or new multi-tool, but it looks like a staff basically. So I've actually got a couple staffs already that I've gotten from expeditions, but this is just kind of in-game stuff. So trying to finish that off. And then the other one, another survival game that I've jumped into is Palworld. My son started playing that actually this past week again. So he was asking me if I wanted to play. I was like, oh yeah, I'll definitely, I love jumping into Palworld. And so we had started a game, one of his, just on his side and his game. I think sometime last year, maybe in the year before, and we hadn't touched it for a while. So we're just continuing on that. And I've actually been playing it on the Steam Deck, and it's been running. It runs fine. Like I have no problems with it. Kind of even when I was playing on PC, I think I used a controller back then too because it was just kind of easier doing some of the, at least doing some of just like the gameplay, like the battles and stuff seemed a little easier than than a mouse and keyboard. So we're just kind of working our way through that right now. We're fairly early in still. I think I'm under like level 15 or something, 16, somewhere around there. So just enjoying Palworld. So and supposedly they're supposed to have their big 1.0 version release at some point this year. So we'll see. That's kind of a good refresher before that happens.
Okay, very cool. To round things out for this episode, a quick rundown of the significant new releases coming out this week. Fallout 4 Anniversary Edition comes out February 24th on the Switch 2. So Tuesday. Later this week, you have Tokyo Extreme Racer making its way to PlayStation 5. That game has been out, I think, on PC, on Steam for a while, so making its way console side. And then you have the big Capcom Resident Evil Palooza. You got Resident Evil Requiem coming out on February 27th on PS5, Xbox, Switch 2, and PC. Resident Evil 7 coming out February 27th for Switch 2, and Resident Evil Village coming out February 27th for Switch 2 as well. Tao, you've been putting in a lot of time on your Switch 2 most recently. It seems like, from a statistical perspective, I would say it is your main for the time being. Are you planning on picking any of these up?
No, yeah, I haven't. I'm not like a huge Resident Evil fan, so I probably won't pick up any of those. Maybe Fallout 4 eventually, but not right away, just to see how that works out. Kind of compare it between the Xbox version that I had played for quite a while, actually. But yeah, probably nothing this week. How about you? Anything that you're looking forward to here?
If I finish up Legend of Heroes, and I will say this has kind of been tickling at the back of my brain, is these Resident Evil games coming out, which I am also too not a super huge Resident Evil fan. I'm gonna like Resident Evil 2 was peak for me, and everything else I've been kind of ho hum on. I really liked Resident Evil Village. I played a chunk of it but didn't finish it. So I want to say not Village. I'm sorry, Resident Evil 7. But it's been interesting to me that this is potentially another re-onboarding point. And so if I do happen to finish Legend of Heroes Trails Beyond the Horizon, which, like I said, is I think the thing that's been picking at the back of my brain about not putting the game down, then I could. That would open up a slot in my roster where I may bring something new into the rotation. Although I have also been very heavily eyeing Tokyo Extreme Racer since it's been on PC. That to me wouldn't occupy a slot. Like I have Grid, what is it? Grid Legends, I think, Deluxe Edition, the thing that just came out in February.
Yeah.
And that doesn't, like, I don't really consider that as occupying a slot in my rotation, right? Because that's a game I can pick away at, and I'm not wrapped around the axle about finishing it like from beginning to end. So the story-driven stuff, yeah, if I knock out Trails, then there's a good chance that I could pick these up. And so I definitely need to kind of very quickly do the rounds and see when review embargoes go up for those games, and just kind of see. I always want to make sure that they're technically sound and not full of frame rate and stutter. Like I said, Capcom has the penchant for using RE Engine for every game, and yet no game runs well using RE Engine except Resident Evil games. So hopefully that will still be true, but I always kind of look at those with side eye, and I'm like, yeah, I want to make sure, before I drop money on these things.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see how Requiem does on the Switch too, since it's the brand new release compared to all the other ones. I'm assuming that 7 and Village should be pretty well run pretty well, but you never know.
Yeah, and those are games that I might like picking up on the Switch 2 to have in mobile form factor, and also in something that's more ergonomically pleasing and easier to handle than the Steam Deck. So we'll see. I might have Resident Evil 7 on Steam. I gotta check for that. But yeah, there's some possibilities there. Like I said, I think I can see the end in sight for Trails Beyond the Horizon. We'll just see. My biggest problem this week has been, like, literally every time I sit down to game, like, my phone has been blowing. Like, text messages and and WhatsApp messages and phone calls and stuff. And I'm like, I just want a game. So We'll see. We'll see how that goes.
So quick question for you for Trails. Uh, do you want to finish it because just you want to, the story is good and the gameplay is good, or is it one of those things where it's like, oh, you know what, I'm already gone, however many hours, I might as well just, complete it at this point.
Yes. Yeah, I mean,
I know how that is.
no, I mean, what I will say is, yeah, and I am trying to kind of soul search through this, right, and kind of come down on a like good articulation of how I feel. What I will say is, there are other games that I've gotten. I mean, heck, that I've gotten past like the 23-hour point, and I'm like, screw this. Like, I got to go play something else. This is overstaying its welcome. It's really making me angry. How it's kind of putting this administrative. I have not had that feeling with Trails. There's stuff in Trails that's painful, but at no point have I said, I'm tired of this. I'm not having a good time. This is getting on my nerves. This game should have wrapped up 40 hours ago. Like, so I think part of that is my acknowledgement of like what that game was before I started it. But also it's like I'm playing it and I'm like none of this outside of the fact that I've spent 86 hours in it, there's nothing here that's making me angry. It's not like Red Dead Redemption 2. Like where I was like, come on, this is a waste of my time. Why am I putting this wagon wheel on this wagon? In the initial kind of 2 hours of Red Dead Redemption, there's other stuff I want to do. There's other stuff I want to get to, and in lots of those cases, I think it's when the game is making you do stuff, but there's more interesting stuff to do in the game, but you can't get to the more interesting stuff in the game because the game is making you do stuff you don't want to do. I will say at the end game here, I am, I've gone through different modes of consuming this game. I have sat and like read through every line of click text and listened to every voiceover, and then I have gone to listening to the voiceovers and quickly tabbing through the read text and like speed reading it. I've gone to you know not listening to the voiceovers and just like scanning the text and getting the general gist. And then here at the end game, what I am doing is I'm just blowing through the cutscenes. So, but I will say like every one of those modes that I've gone through has been enjoyable, right? In how I consume the game. So, and it's fortunate that they put those hooks in there so that you can drive the experience to be how you want it to be, right? You're not slave to this one modality of how you consume the game. So I am completing it as a matter of like eating all your vegetables kind of stuff, but there's nothing about that I'm not enjoying or that I'm angry about. Yeah, which is the kind of the telltale between like other games that I've played. All right, Tal. Anything else you want to go over? Okay, for everybody who came through the live chat, we appreciate you. We appreciate you, Real Innate, Hero Down Under, Warawana, Denza Fly. Denza Fly did ask one question that I didn't get a chance to get to. Innate said, yeah, a quick comment there. Yeah, she's doing too much Twitter. She needs to fall back. And that's, I think, a sentiment that we've said. I think there's a whole section here that I missed. But Denafly made one question that I did want to at least quickly entertain. I think he said, I can't find it now. I think he said, what does Satya want from the new CEO? I'll say my comment is, I've been trying to fight it. I think I'm just coming around to he wants efficiency and he wants the stuff that he's asked to have done and the direction this business needs to head. He wants that. He doesn't want the resistance anymore. Like he doesn't want, what is now the old guard, and he doesn't want he wants somebody doing what he says, not weighing what he's saying against what they think gamers want because they're too loyal to gamers and less loyal to just running and executing the business the way he wants it to be. I don't know, Tao, what are your thoughts on that question?
Yeah, I mean, I'm sure he put the proper people in place that he wanted, and that's probably why, because he wants things to get done, and without, I don't want to say any pushback or feedback, but a minimal at the lead at the best. So yeah.
Yeah, there's this question, the big question, what Satya wants from the new CEO. And look, I mean, there's lots of comments about, well, he just wanted a yes man and blah 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 blah. And I look, I mean, to me, it's a scale, right? Sure, there's a point where you're willing to listen to feedback, but look, I've had employees who will just try and ignore you, right? We'll try and wait you out. We'll try and be like, have had people literally say to me in the brief when I've asked them or called them on, I asked for a thing to be this way, or I asked for you to do this thing. I've literally had people say to me, I thought you were kidding. I didn't think that was that important. I didn't think you were serious. And like, I try and hold my tongue right in a public space. And I'm like, so I think there's always a point where you get to where like, there's a point where like it's 49%, like, and that's fine. But then when it becomes 51%, particularly when it's 51% for like months and the person's not changing, then you're just like, okay, like it's time to make a change. Okay, I think that is all we wanted to go through. So thanks so much again, everybody who came to the live chat. We appreciate you. For anyone who happens to watch the archive version of this live show on the E2KG Network podcast channel on YouTube, please feel free to like the video and subscribe to the channel so you can just receive a notification whenever we post new content. We will be back next Sunday night at 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. I do not know who will be host because I think it will be Tao. I'm pretty sure because I think I took this rotation for DBQ, but we got to work out if DBQ wants. Somebody will be host. Until next time, thanks so much for joining in tonight. Take care of yourselves. Stay safe out there. Play the games that you like. Come here to talk to us about the games that you love. Once again, my name has been Game Logic for the Rounding Off Infinity Gaming channel on YouTube, here with my stalwart partner in crime, Mr. Towmaster99. Until next time, good night, good luck, and good gaming. That's going to do it for us. We're out of here.